just do something you enjoy doing, and just make sure it's something you have a natural knowledge in. Some people are good in certain areas and some are not. I've had students come to me and say they want to do research and they are bright, but I know that it's not in them to do it. And I tell them, look, this is not for you. You are good at ABC. Why not try that instead? So I would say, yeah, follow your passion, but ensure that it aligns with your ability, and ignore all the stuff with money, etc. that will come over time, as long as you do what you like.
All right, hello everyone. We're here again for another one of our Caribbean Data Science interview series, and we're very privileged to have Dr. Patrick Hosein, who's a professor at UWI. And Patrick, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
So we have some incredible ground to cover based on your immaculate career, if I could call it that. We are going to link in the description of this video some additional footage. Dr. Hosein was the recipient of one of the Answer McCall Awards for Excellence a few years ago, and there was a good video done by that. We'll set that up in the description so that you guys could learn a more broad understanding of his background and his accomplishments. But today, since the focus of this series is on data science, AI, machine learning, we're going to talk to him about that. So Patrick, let me just jump right in if that's okay. And let's talk about what you're working on currently.
Okay, so before I do that, Jeff, you being a science man as well, for the other science people listening, I just want to mention I'm also in the science, what's it called, the Hall of Fame. So together with people like Father Laifuka, etc. So yeah. I always bring that up because I think it's it's something I feel gratified for. But in terms of what else I do, besides being a professor in computer science, I run a company called TTNIC, Trinidad and Tobago Network Information Center. The company manages the .td domain. And this is something I started way back in the 90s when we first got internet access in Trinidad. Over the years, I've continued doing that and still do that today. As part of that, we also provide free hosting and domain names for all schools, all educational institutions in Trinidad. And I personally support the technical aspects of that project. So if a school needs stmarys.edu.tt, they apply to us and we provide them with resources to set it up. Terrific. It's becoming even more important these days with online education. There's also, I'm also part of another group called TTMAG, Trinidad and Tobago Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group. And this was formed by TTNIC to provide advice on internet governance in Trinidad and Tobago, in particular, policies for the .tt domain. So it consists of stakeholders from multiple, from academia, from government, from civic society, etc. Then there's TT Lab, and you see a trend here: TTNIC, TTMAC, TT Lab. But so TT Lab it's not a formal research group, but it's a collection of individuals who are interested in doing research. It consists mainly of people from UWI, students from UWI, undergrad, postgrad, from different disciplines. We have people from electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, statistics, mathematics, computer science, data science, economics. So we all get together and jointly do research. I'm also part of a company called Div Solutions, and this company was formed to solve an issue we had. So as part of my research group, what I try to do is get internships for students in industry, so they work on real problems and use data science applied to real industry problems. These internships tend to be on the order of 1 year or 6 months or 1 year. And in most cases, we come up with novel solutions. We publish the work, and we provide a proof of concept for the company. Unfortunately, we cannot take it beyond that point. We cannot develop a commercial product platform for the company because that's not our main objective. So Div Solutions was formed to kind of take over from that point. And so Div Solutions provides the ongoing maintenance and upgrades for whatever platform we design. I'm also leading a UE data science cluster, which is meant to improve collaboration across campuses in the area of AI and data science. So we have campuses in St. Augustine, Mona, Jamaica, Keyville, Barbados. Then there's the Five Island campus as well. So I'm trying to get all the individuals from these different campuses who are interested in machine learning, etc., to collaborate in some ways. And we've started doing some of that with Barbados, for instance. We're also part of another lab, D4D lab. So another thing we try to do is in addition to using data science for industrial problems, we want to solve some problems in society as well, so have a societal impact. So we collaborate with an organization called the Cropper Foundation in doing some of that type of work. So that Cropper Foundation has this lab called D4D, and we are part of that. So that in a nutshell is some of the other stuff we presently do.
I don't think it'll fit in a nutshell, maybe a large coconut, but there's a really fantastic array of ventures and efforts, Patrick. I don't think it would be unfair to say that you are a true veritable resource for anyone who wants to get involved in data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning across the Caribbean or even around the world. So we're really lucky to have you here, and congratulations on all of those efforts. You were an early pioneer, and we'll talk more about this as we go through, on bringing the internet to Trinidad. You pioneered many technologies in your days back and forth between the US and the Caribbean in terms of cellular technology and cloud technology. You have, I'm guessing by now, over 80 patents. Is that right?
No, it's about 40 patents.
40, okay. 40 going on 80 at some point soon, depending on when they get granted. And you work with a lot of people, both in the Caribbean, in the US, and globally, whose careers align with all of the things you just mentioned, correct?
Yes.
Right, that's terrific. Now, you specifically mentioned AI, machine learning, data science. So we like to start up front and make sure everybody has common ground in terms of what you mean when you talk about those three distinct aspects. So could you give us your definition of AI versus machine learning versus data science, and how do you see them interplaying with regard to the type of stuff you work on?
Okay, so when I hear AI, I always think about the general definition. So there's general AI, which is replicating the human thought process in a computer, which we kind of do right now. And then there's narrow AI, which is what we focus on these days with machine learning. So AI, in my mind, is more on the general AI side of things. And so I prefer to refer to the work we do as data science. Mm-hmm. Now, machine learning is a little bit more specific in that it basically, it's taking data, putting it through a computer. The computer uses an algorithm to extract patterns, etc., and then you replicate the decision-making process for new data. So it's specific to that. Now, data science, on the other hand, is more general. It includes machine learning, but it includes a lot of additional techniques and tools that you would find from traditional statistics, from operations research, optimization, etc. So it's a bigger toolkit. that you would apply to problems you face in industry, process optimization, etc. So that's my general view on things.
And so as a practitioner and somebody that's been involved in multiple companies, as well as a professor of computer science, what would you say are the traits that allow someone to become successful in becoming a data scientist? Let's say there was someone today in high school who wanted to learn more about this field, or someone at university level who wanted to lean into becoming more qualified in the field of data science. What thoughts would you share about what makes someone a solid data scientist?
Okay, so if you're talking about high school students, I would say yes. Check the technologies available today, etc. Play around with app development, but focus right now on the basics, because it's important to have the basics in things like probability, linear algebra, calculus, because what I find these days is a lot of students just applying techniques without understanding what's happening underneath. So we get students at UE, for instance, who do not know sufficient probability, for instance, to understand some of the algorithms that are used. So yeah, I would say focus on getting the basic education, as both of us did at St. Mary's, doing, I did a pure math, applied math, physics, and I enjoy that. So at the high school level, focus on getting the basics. When you get into university, I would advise ensuring that you pursue a field that combines your interest with what you are naturally capable of doing. So some people are good at science, some are good at math, etc. Don't force yourself into something that you're not good at or you're not interested in. Now, I know in Trinidad, there's always this pressure from parents to become a doctor, or lawyer, etc. So there's that issue as well.
Maybe in the 60s, but we're in a completely different revolution today, which we'll talk about.
Well, yeah, but I still come across students who say, they would have liked to do ABC, but their parents would prefer if they do something else. So it still happens, but not as much as before. In terms of early career professionals, my advice is to try as many things as you can as possible. There's a lot to learn out there, and you may find out that what you're doing right now is not what you really would like to do, and there may be something else that might be better, that you're more interested in, or you have the natural capability for.
Yeah.
Just to give an example, prior to UE, I believe I had moved around to different companies on an average of every 5 years. So I moved, from company to company. Now, the reason I'm at UE for the last 10 years is it gives me the flexibility to do a wide range of things. So, whereas in industry, you have to focus on the main job you have.
At Bell Labs, contrast.
At Bell Labs, it was a little different. You had flexibility, but these days, if you go to these high-tech companies, you have to focus on a specific area, contribute in that area, which gives you, less flexibility to learn completely different fields. Yeah. So at UE now, I enjoy doing work in electrical engineering, doing wireless communications work, doing work with in economics, in health. So I guess that's one of the reasons I've been sticking around so long.
Yeah, terrific. Since you mentioned Bell Labs, for those who don't know what that is and what it was at the time, what would you say is the equivalent company today to Bell Labs, and how would you describe that environment?
Well, I guess the equivalent would be companies like Google and Facebook and Qualcomm.
Right.
Especially in the communications area, I guess Qualcomm
right.
would be equivalent.
And why did you go to Bell?
Okay, well, so when I completed my PhD, I wanted to do research. I had no interest really in teaching. And in those days, the two biggest research labs were probably Bell Labs and IBM TJ Watson. So I went there to do research in optimization, which was my area of expertise. But because I was on a J1 visa, having been on a scholarship, a national scholarship, I could only spend 18 months at Bell Labs. So that's when I returned home. My first return to Trinidad was after Bell Labs.
Now, you did your PhD also at MIT in addition to your bachelor's and master's. In those days, doing a PhD was not an easy thing, especially at a place like MIT. It isn't easy today. What motivated you to do a PhD, and what was some of the things that you feel you got coming out of Trinidad that allowed you to endure the journey of completing that enormously strenuous program?
Well, for one thing, I have to say the high school education I got in Trinidad was top class. When I got to MIT, I was intimidated by all these bright people, but then I realized in terms of the mathematics and physics background I had, I was sort of ahead of the game. Right. I wasn't, when it came to programming, I wasn't near where they were, but so that gave me a head start, and that's why I was able to complete my degree early and do a double degree, because the government was paying for 4 years, I might as well stay 4 years.
And what was the international class at MIT like in your days?
Well, it was mostly foreigners in my day. I can't. It depends on the area, but in engineering, specifically in electrical and computer engineering, or electrical engineering and computer science, as they call it, there was a high percentage of foreigners.
How many West Indians out of MIT's international population at the time?
Oh, it was. I would say there was probably one Trinidadian every 4 years or so.
So you were alone for the most part.
Yeah, when I was there, there was I believe there was a guy named Colin Barcon. But besides that, there weren't many Trinidadians.
Which people did you find yourself making friends with as a Trinidadian?
Oh, the Caribbean, there were other Caribbean people from Jamaica, etc. So, so we did form, I believe we were the ones to form the Caribbean Society, or I forget what the name of the group is. So we got together and I met people like a colleague of mine at UWI right now, Kim Maliliu. She was at MIT at that time. So there was some Caribbean community, but not as big as it probably is now. I mean, now there are a lot more Trinidadians and people from the Caribbean at MIT.
I hope so, and also wherever they go, and regardless of whether it's MIT or not, we have a lot of people aspiring into this field. So let's talk a bit about that. So after Bell Labs, you decided to teach. So it sounds like initially there was not the urge to teach for you, but how did that emerge for you?
Well, as I said, after Bell Labs, I needed to return home because, you based on the scholarship, you need to return to your country for at least 3 years. And so when I got back there, I wanted to do research, and the only option was really to do it at UWI. So that's when I joined the electrical engineering department at UWI. And at that time, Professor Julian was there, and he really gave me full support in research, and he was the one who gave me the resources I need to bring the internet to UWI in those early days.
So let's talk about that as you bring that up. So you were an early pioneer of bringing the internet to Trinidad. What was that what was layer one back in those days?
Okay, so when I returned, of course, I wanted to continue some of the research I had started at Bell Labs, and in order to do that, we couldn't communicate by postal mail. We needed email, so I needed email, and there was no internet access at UA at that point. We did have computers. We had a computer lab, etc.
And this was late 80s, early 90s, correct?
Yeah, this was early 90s. So what I did was I was able to join this program where I could dial in to Puerto Rico. And I had first of all, I needed to get permission to use our phone lines to dial to Puerto Rico. So Professor Julian, again, he said, okay, we have a fax line. You could use that on evenings from 4 to 5. So from 4 to 5 on evenings, I would use a Unix workstation, dial into Puerto Rico, form that dial-up connection, and then use that to interconnect the university wide area, local area network. And then you would have students in the computer center accessing the internet through that dial-up connection.
And let's just contextualize it for our audience today. So what modem speed were you talking about dialing all the way to Puerto Rico from Trinidad in those days?
Well, and so you're talking about an international link. So we're talking about like 28 kilobits per second.
28 kilobits per second. And 5G today is how fast?
Well, it depends, but yeah, we're talking about, gigabits per second, so
literally
several orders of magnitude different.
Almost 1 billion times faster in the space of 20 years. And that is a whole country compared to one individual on a cell phone.
Right.
Yeah.
So of course we were limited in what we could do, and things like email, we would have to use protocols like UUCP and things like that. So it was primitive, but we and we were using things like Mosaic, which is the early browser.
Yeah.
But it gave us the opportunity to start playing around with these with the internet.
Yeah.
And when TSCT, which is the local telephone company, decided they wanted to offer internet services and form an ISP, we submitted a proposal to do it for them, and we won. And this was unheard of, because in those days, local companies didn't have the confidence in a bunch of UE people doing something such as that.
Right.
So we won that. We developed software to manage the modems, et cetera. And as we were discussing earlier, Jeff, some of your colleagues were part of that. Kevin Blackman and Jason Anano and Ronald Lessie. They were the developers of the software.
Right. We definitely have to credit them here for posterity. I don't know if many people know the names of the team, and then the folks over at TIDCO, led by Simon Fraser out of IBM, who pioneered the early days of the internet, but yourself included, of course.
Right. In fact, this was a joint proposal between us and IBM. So IBM provided the hardware, and we developed the software. Because in those days, there was no software off the shelf that you could use for this. So we actually developed all the management software, etc.
So it's a terrific lesson learned there. So it shows how one's passion for collaboration and commitment to academic research and moving a field forward enabled you to, I guess, apply the mother of invention to create what was needed for the country to get on the internet in the early days. And today, people probably take Trinidad and Tobago, one of the highest concentrations of cellular access per capita in the world, take for granted the fact that we're on the internet. But I'm glad we could at least talk about where that story started for history's purpose. You and I also had a chance to touch history in 1994 or thereabouts. I think we brought the World Wide Web down on a laptop because we didn't have enough bandwidth to actually access the servers at MIT at the time. So we downloaded everything and put it on a laptop, and we ran a little seminar. Can you recount what the audience was like and how many people from the press and government came to that?
To be honest, Jeff, I can't recall.
It wasn't memorable, right? That's the point.
Yeah,
we went to the Hilton. We went to the Hilton. It was a huge promotion, and I think we had one journalist and maybe two people from industry.
Yeah. But in those days, the thing is, it wasn't very. For instance, when we submitted this proposal to TSTT, we had to demonstrate what we could do. And the one thing was Kevin Blackman used a browser to show a brief clip of a cricket match. And so back in those days, remember doing that was very difficult because
absolutely,
but yeah, it
no was such thing as real-time video back then.
Right, it was underwhelming, and but people couldn't. People were not willing to see in the future the potential for it.
Couldn't connect the dots.
Yeah, in particular, I mean, I'll be blunt about this. One professor at UE said, "Oh, the internet is just a playground for students." So they saw it more like you're going to go there and play games, etc. So there was little foresight in those days. Yeah.
Right, and we had similar responses from other business leaders and obviously people in government. Let's talk about today, just to kind of jump ahead. So we're pioneering the fourth industrial revolution today, where massively parallel computational architectures combined with incredible fields of data and incredible knowledge that's been gathered over the years on the internet can all be harnessed to do something very, very different. What are some of the parallels that you are seeing today? What are some of the efforts you're trying to introduce? And how are those analogies perhaps going to help people start to see the next big revolution that countries, emerging economies like Caribbean economies like Trinidad and Tobago and other countries around the world have to start paying attention to and have to start participating in for them to participate in this fourth industrial revolution?
Right. So, we tend to follow, which is, the government tends to follow what other countries do as opposed to taking the initiative to say, okay, look, this has potential. Let's dive into it early on and see what happens. So the same thing happened with the internet. We got it, but we got it later that, we should have. We could have gotten it earlier. Now, there's a lot to talk about innovation and coming up with products that we could increase foreign exchange, et cetera. And so there's a lot of effort in diving in straight into innovation. Now, in some cases, yes, you can develop something without some of the advanced knowledge you would need in some of these technologies. But all the emphasis is on, or most of the emphasis is on app development or software development, and that has passed. Those days have passed. We have to go beyond that now, and develop the underlying technologies or the underlying algorithms that power these apps, which requires data science. Some of the algorithms, Facebook and Google and all of these are based on really top-notch algorithms, right? So the front end is interesting, but the back end is where the more knowledge-based stuff comes in. So that's where we need to place more focus on educating and doing research in data science and all the other related technologies. So my push is on doing that from an education side. For instance, I started an MSc in data science 4 years ago. I proposed a PhD in data science a couple of years ago, and that was turned down by the university. I would say for...
I'll sign up as one of your students.
Unfortunately, it was turned down for reasons that were not logical. But anyway.
Maybe you can just tutor me on the side and we'll convince UE to give me a degree.
Well,
because it's Dr. Patrick Hosein.
The reason for pushing that is what happens is that data science, you could have people with different backgrounds doing a PhD in data science, people with electrical, with computer science, with statistics. And unfortunately, what was happening is if somebody wanted to apply for a PhD in the computer science department, they had to have a computer science undergrad degree. And so I wanted to get us away from that by introducing a PhD in data science. And for that PhD, you could have different types of backgrounds in statistics or computer science, whatever, and still be able to do a data science PhD.
If you got funding for such a program, would you still be interested in making it happen?
Well, I don't think it's so much the funding, because the PhD program is low cost at UWI right now. But I believe if I try to push it down, it will go through. But when I tried to do it it was about 2 or 3 years ago, people didn't really appreciate the value that AI would provide.
But that has changed quite a bit.
That has changed quite a bit since then.
How long do you think a student who would qualify, in your mind, it would take them to earn such a PhD?
At UWI, it depends, but I would say between 3 to 5 years they can.
That's very competitive. Very competitive.
But of course, you have to have the resources, you have to have the right supervision, etc.
And would you see such a program being distributed given our time of COVID, or would people have to be admitted and physically on campus with you?
No need to be on campus. I mean, look, I'm supervising about 30 students right now, and I'm in San Diego.
Right.
So there's no need to be in physical contact with anybody anymore.
We would not have thought that, given the wonderful plantain trees we see behind us there.
Yeah, well, that's my San Diego backyard there, with trying to grow some tropical trees, sapodilla and plantain, etc. But yeah, so just, the fact that we could now teach from anywhere means a couple of things. We could now attract other people worldwide to teach courses at UWI without having to physically go to Trinidad.
Right.
All right, that's one thing. We could also now attract students worldwide, because anybody worldwide could join these programs. So there's a lot more flexibility in how we can provide programs, but the bureaucracy makes it a little bit difficult to make these changes, and that's one of the issues we have. But
well, maybe that'll change in the coming months. Let's see.
Yeah, well, COVID has forced a change. Before COVID, I mean, if I told them, look, I want to go back to San Diego for a couple of months and teach from there, they would say, no way at all. Even for meetings, we would have to sometimes go in physically to the university for meetings. But now, everything is online. So now COVID has shifted things quite a bit in my favor, I have to say, because now I could teach remotely. And just to give another example, my son, he teaches a course at UC Davis, and he decided to go to Barbados and teach. So he is actually doing the reverse of me. He's in the Caribbean teaching here. I'm here teaching in the Caribbean. So
yeah, it's really forced our world to truly embrace the reality of the internet and operate in a much more global, diverse fashion. It's incredible.
Right. Well, certain fields, you need to have that physical contact, but data science, which is just pen and paper and computer, then you don't need to have that physical contact.
Yeah. Let's go back to the fourth industrial revolution. Talk about some of the projects you and the folks that you work with have been doing. First of all, tell us a bit about the people you choose to work with, and what are the type of projects that you feel very proud of showcasing that represents this coming revolution in industry.
So the students come from a wide range of backgrounds. So I have my postgrad students, a lot of MSc students doing their MSc in data science, but also APs, associate professionals. These are returning scholars or local scholars who now have to serve their 3 years. So sometimes we have these bright students coming back from, Cornell and some top universities. They come back to Trinidad and they end up in a ministry doing trivial stuff.
Right.
So I try to attract these students to come and do research with me. Sometimes in the area that they were doing research when they were doing their undergrad, and publish. So
very exciting. Very exciting.
Main focus is publishing. And we also have people who have gone into industry, but they are not challenged in industry, so they want to do something research-wise, and so they work with me. And some companies actually give them time to work with me. So I have this reverse internship program where a company gives their employee 4 hours per week to work under my guidance or under my supervision to do some sort of more research type work related to their regular job. So yes.
And what do you look for? Like I know you mentioned that some of them are master's students, some of them are, professionals who would have to demonstrate to you their penchants for the field. But what specifically do you look for in terms of people who would be successful under your guidance?
Okay, well, first of all, attitude. And I kind of, when I interview them, I want to find out what is their long-term goal? What is their attitude towards doing research? How much time will they have available? How much interest they have? If they are just interested in it because they say, okay, well, I just want to do data science because it looks like it's a hot field. And so there's no
substance.
And then I look at their ability. So I see, what courses they've taken and then I go from there, and then I let them know, look, you are going to be working mostly on your own. I will supervise, but having 30 plus students to do the same thing, I can't spend too much time on you. And if I leave the timelines up to you, how fast you work is how fast you publish.
So they need to have a high degree of independence.
Exactly. And so from the go, I and some of them need help along that. But for the first couple of months, I would sort of give them some guidance, but eventually most of them can do stuff on their own.
And what prerequisites in terms of degrees and backgrounds?
I really don't look too much at those, whether it's electrical engineering or statistics, as long as I could see that you have potential to learn, then that's all I care about. So for instance, I have a lot of statistics people, for instance, and they are good with the mathematical stuff, excellent. But when it comes to the programming with Python, etc., they are a bit weak with that. So I know they would need help in that, and that's where we help them.
Right. So Python, for anyone out there who is an aspiring data scientist, is a must-have. Try to get yourself up to being proficient and, if not advanced, in Python. Yeah.
And typically statistics students would use R, and engineers tend to use MATLAB. But when you go out to industry, like when we did some work with TSTT, for instance, if you have to deploy something, you can't really deploy it using MATLAB or R. You have to deploy it using Python or something. So the statistics students would have that difficulty, but this is where my other students would help them with the programming aspects. And vice versa. Sometimes I have a computer science student working on a paper, and they need help with stochastic processes or probability or something, and I would bring in one of the statistics students into that publication, and they would contribute with that. So it's a combination of backgrounds. I don't expect everybody to have the background needed to just start off data science immediately. Some of them will be lacking, and I just take that into account. I just look for the attitude and the willingness to want to produce some sort of publication within the next 4 or 5 months.
What sorts of projects do you think in the next few months you can showcase that indicate to countries like Trinidad and Tobago, to companies there, the types of things that they should be doing with their data?
So what we typically do is when we go, and these companies come to us, all right? So TSTD came to us, TN Tech came to us, etc. So a company would come to us and say, look, we want to use our data, and we have some idea of what we could use it for, but we're not clear on how it could be used. So we would go in, we would sit with them, get samples of their data sets, find out some of their objectives, if they want to increase efficiency, look at performance evaluation, etc. And then come up with some kind of a project. And so these interns, so let me give you an example with TSTD, for instance.
Sure.
We ended up, they took 5 interns. So these interns get a stipend. They work on a problem that is beneficial to the company, but they also publish. So they gain in 3 ways, because they also use it towards their thesis in some cases. So they use it for their thesis, they publish, they get an income, and the company benefits by solving a problem. In the case of TSCT, it was a wide range of areas. In that case, we had 3 people from statistics, 1 from computer science, 1 from data science. And they worked from HR problems to operational problems in the cellular network to customer satisfaction problems, etc., applying data science. And as I said, each of those resulted in a publication. So it gives the student practical knowledge. It allows the company to evaluate these students. And so typically the company would actually hire some of these students full-time immediately after. So, everybody benefits. And the thing is, that's a good thing about data science. I keep telling the students, in certain fields, there's no potential locally. Like my background is in wireless communications. Now, it's useless for me to do wireless communications research in Trinidad because very little of it could be applied locally. In fact, I do some wireless research still, but with somebody from Korea. And so we filed a patent recently, but we filed it in Korea because it wouldn't be used in Trinidad, for instance. But with data science, there's any company could use it. And so that's why I say, if you want to have a career that would allow you to stay in Trinidad, data science would be it. On the other hand, companies are now beginning to realize the benefit of data science. Before they didn't see the benefit. They would see self-driving cars, etc., but they didn't see the connection with what they could use it for internally. But I think they are now seeing that and appreciate what we could do. Now, one of the issues, of course, is they can no longer hire some of these high-end foreign consultants that they hired in the past. All right, because of foreign exchange issues, etc. So they kind of forced to come to us, but they are also beginning to realize we can do a lot more than they think we can, which is one of my objectives, to show locally that our students locally could produce. Because some of these foreign so-called experts just come down and do a shabby job, and they go and they collect their big bucks, and that's it. So yeah, that's my little beef when it comes to this. But going back to your question about what type of work we do, it's in applying data science to any data set we get in industry. It could be things like optimization, doing spatio-temporal optimization of gas delivery. There's a whole range of topics we work on. We looked at doing stuff in smart grids for the power company, looking at fault detection algorithms. With insurance companies, we work with we work with 3 insurance companies right now. So we have to be careful sometimes that we don't share too much information across companies. But it's very interesting to see the fact that we have so much interesting data that could be utilized. The thing is that some of these companies do not realize that they cannot solve some of their problems by using foreign off-the-shelf tools, because it doesn't apply to our environment, either because it was developed for a larger scale, or the constraints were completely different. Things like what features do you use in coming up with an insurance premium? The ones you would use in the US would be different to what you would want to use in Trinidad. And we've shown them these things.
So to summarize, you've created a path to excellence in the field of data science for any professional locally who would seek to look at the problems that an environment like Trinidad and Tobago has and seek to become the very best in the field. And they can do that through you or one of the efforts you've been leading.
Yes.
That's really terrific.
One thing I would want to bring up as well is one issue we have locally as well is compensation. Mm-hmm. And what is happening though is these interns, when they go in and they get hired, they actually ask for a very high salary and they get it, because I think the companies now realize that this type of talent, to keep it, they have to pay well. And we've actually seen offers go up and up over time.
Yeah, so to build on that, so for those who are also realizing that this is a field that is in global demand and are aspiring to solve similar problems globally, your efforts have attracted the likes of, I guess, in my opinion, the world's leading AI company, NVIDIA, to help you and support some of the efforts. Can you talk a little bit about what aspects of what you're doing you felt invited a company like NVIDIA to say yes to supporting you?
Well, yeah, so NVIDIA, as you know, Torian approached us and I met with him, about 2 years ago, and he would like to contribute through NVIDIA. And so initially, I had some of my students work with him on coming up with doing blogs, for instance, mm-hmm. on technologies. So the issue is that we have limited resources, especially when it comes to computer resources, and companies like NVIDIA could help us with those things, as well as help us. Remember, we have limited supervision of data science students at UE. I mean, I supervise, but to be clear, my background is wireless communications, optimization as well. So having some of these experts from NVIDIA and Google, etc., would definitely help create better professionals locally as well.
Right, and you're referring to Torian Dyer, who's one of our leads at NVIDIA. That's right. Part of our extended group. But what would you say were the reasons Torian decided to support our humble efforts way over here? And people in California don't even know where Trinidad and Tobago is. So what standards do you feel you've set that allowed him to bring you guys into the NVIDIA Global Sphere Silicon Valley fold?
Well, I think he saw that we are capable of doing, probably not at the international level yet in certain mm-hmm. areas, but he saw we have the potential, and he wants us to use our potential to get up to the standard where he could then say, I could recommend this student for a full-time job at NVIDIA, or recommend him for an internship at NVIDIA. And I think that's the ultimate goal, to have these companies hire some of these students I have. And now I encourage my students, whether through academia or industry, to get experience abroad if possible, in the hope that they eventually come back and help, later in their life. But I think it's important for those who can to get some exposure internationally, because just having local experience, gives you a false impression of things. For instance, a lot of people would see an idea and say, "Oh, that's an innovative idea," but it's not really innovative, because if you look at it, it's something that's available in other countries, and that exposure with what's going on internationally is good.
Terrific. Really amazing stuff. With all of this that you have going on, Patrick, do you have time to read still?
I never liked reading, so it's not a matter of still or not. I never read that much. I know you had asked if to provide some examples of the last thing I probably read is talking about an actual book.
Yeah.
Is a book by a guy called Sadhguru on inner engineering, where it shows you how to improve yourself by engineering yourself internally. So it's not really a technical book, but the way I get information is by skimming magazines or technical journals.
Anyone's in particular that you feel are relevant to the field?
Well, IEEE, but because I am in the IEEE Communication Society, I typically follow their magazines on wireless communications. I am a member of ACM as well, and I look at some stuff there as well.
The Association for Computing Machinery.
Yeah, right. But in terms of reading actual books, yeah, I haven't read in a while. In terms of podcasts, you asked about that as well, but I don't listen to podcasts. I did participate in a couple. There's a very good one, ICT Pulse, by somebody called Michelle Morias.
Okay.
And she covers technology in the Caribbean. So it's a very good, so you could probably Google it, ICT Pulse. In terms of YouTube channels, which you also mentioned, I check to see what channels I have on my, I just have one on yoga, the one I follow for my yoga class, and my daughter Trisha's. She's a performer, and so I follow her on YouTube as well.
Terrific.
So yeah, so in terms of learning new stuff, I tend to learn on demand. So if a student comes to me and with an idea and I need to learn something to keep up with what he has to do, then I would, Google and get a good tutorial on it or some textbook and learn that specific aspect of it. But in terms of just reading, yeah, I haven't been doing much of that.
What do you think is going to happen over the next 5 years, and how does that relate to what young folks thinking about their career should be focused on?
Well, yeah, things are changing rapidly in terms of how we work, where we work, and I think that would cause major shifts. And in terms of a career, I think you have to be prepared to learn constantly, because things are changing constantly. You have to look ahead next 10 years and see what will be useful at that point in time and start learning from now. So I see it as an interesting time because people would be allowed to learn a lot more than they would have learned in the past. In the past, you had a job. In fact, I have some friends who've been in a position for 30 years doing research on, a specific area. And they've become experts in that area. But I think with the internet and the way we are now able to learn things with online classes, etc., it would change things in such a way that we should be constantly learning and changing our careers dynamically.
What do you think you'll be doing in 5 years yourself, if you were to take a guess?
Well,
or hope to be doing?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I want to continue helping students at UE, but at some point, I'm hoping some of them will graduate, get faculty positions, and be able to take over from me. But I will probably continue doing research. Probably stop the teaching, but just research. I just enjoy being at home doing research and having the flexibility to travel, and yeah, so that's what I plan to do in the next 5 years. Just do some more traveling. Probably do like my son. He plans to just move around and work from different places. So we'll follow him. So,
Any final thoughts or words of wisdom for our audience?
Well, I would say, for those of you who are now starting off either from high school, university, or early career, just do something you enjoy doing, and just make sure it's something you have a natural knowledge in. Some people are good in certain areas and some are not. I've had students come to me and say they want to do research and they are bright, but I know that it's not in them to do it. And I tell them, look, this is not for you. You are good at ABC. Why not try that instead? So I would say, yeah, follow your passion, but ensure that it aligns with your ability, and ignore all the stuff with money, etc. that will come over time, as long as you do what you like. That's how and again, the three things I look for in a job is flexibility, being able to work when I want and where I want, interest in work, and then of course, benefits or compensation. But the first two are more important to me. So I would advise people just be happy in what you do.
Fantastic advice. Well, it's been a privilege to spend the time with you, Dr. Patrick Hosein, as a pioneer in the internet in Trinidad, in the Caribbean, such an avid researcher and world learner and teacher. And we hope to continue to hear more from you as things progress in the field of AI, data science, and machine learning. Thanks very much for having us.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff, and I hope this is informative to the budding data scientists out there.
Terrific. Okay, all the best.